Thursday, the new Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred said he'll revisit the Rose case. When, at what point? Well, the new guy was short on details. He said only that Rose's lawyers have contacted him about possible reinstatement.
Pete Rose is no angel. He admitted to gambling on baseball games while playing and managing the Cincinnati Reds. He spent years denying it, yet in the end was forced to come to grips with the fact. He once again wants his lifetime ban from baseball to be lifted. The new commissioner, Rob Manfred, will take it under consideration, and one of the largest wounds on the American pastime could be on the verge of being healed. Or perhaps not. It's a pleasure to welcome to MidPoint, assistant managing editor at Sports Illustrated, best-selling author. His latest book is Pete Rose, An American Dilemma, a New York Times bestseller. Kostya Kennedy is in the house. Kostya, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Ed. Good to be on with you.
Good to see you. I did sports talk for a lot of years, and every time the subject of Pete Rose came up, it was the most emotional debate you could ever have, from people who were angry that he cheated and those who said it's about time he get in because he wasn't a steroid user like everybody else. So have we finally gotten to the point where it's time?
It might be time. It's certainly a point where there's been a lot of time has passed, Ed, so he's been out of the game for 25 years. There's no question that he's served a sentence, so to speak. Whether or not he should get into the Hall of Fame, be reinstated, that's a big question, and I think it's right that it's being looked at and right that he's being evaluated. And we'll see. I don't think it's a slam dunk that it happens, but I think it's certainly things look a lot better for Pete now than they have in many years.
What do you think Rob Manfred will look at this time? Because this has gone on before, the possibility of him getting in. So what do you think the commissioner will focus on this time?
Well, he said he's going to look at all the investigation stuff that's happened over the years before he assumed this role, just past couple months. But I don't think that there's that much that will really shed any light or change things for him there. That's been looked at pretty heavily. What he can look at is what Pete is today and what he's doing today, and see how comfortable he is with Pete's lifestyle and how that would affect the game if Pete is let back into the game. The way Pete is out in Vegas signing autographs for a living, and would he be able to continue to do that? It's not really clear.
Kostya, what is that American dilemma when it comes down to Peter Edward Rose?
Well, there's a couple of things I think it means in the title of the book. One is that he is the guy who played the game with more integrity than anybody played it. The hustle, of course, how hard he went on every play. Also, the way he practiced, the way he'd come out and take batting practice, the way he helped younger players. There was nobody better for the game. There was nobody who was better for the fans of the game. And then he committed this crime, which on the human scale, it's obviously betting on baseball. It's nothing compared to some of the domestic abuse or some of the things that players do, of course. But within the circle of baseball, it's sort of the ultimate sin because it can jeopardize the integrity of the game. So here's a guy who played with such great integrity, gave so much to the integrity, and then did something that threatened the integrity. So that's the big dilemma. And the other dilemma is really, what do we make of Pete now after the steroid era, after time has changed? They're obviously not the same thing, steroids and gambling, but they are both people who sort of committed crimes against the nature of the game and fair balance, and so that's one of the dilemmas as well.
I had about 60 seconds left here. I said for a lot of years, I said Pete Rose gets into the Hall of Fame the moment he admits that he bet on gambling, and it goes right on his plaque in Cooperstown because that's why he spent years out. Do you think that would be the proper way to do this if indeed they were to let him into the Hall?
Well, he's already admitted to gambling, and he's only going to admit to what he's gotten caught doing. Pete's not going to volunteer any extra information. It's just not the way Pete operates. Whether or not it's on the plaque, sure. Him getting reinstated to baseball does not put him in the Hall of Fame. That's a whole other step, a whole other voting process. So we'd have to see where that goes. The big thing is whether or not to acknowledge him on a plaque. If you want to do that, it opens up a whole can of worms. Are you going to put in other stuff about other players or not? So it's a difficult one.
It certainly has changed the eras with steroids and so many other things that are involved. Pete never took a steroid, but then again, Pete did break the one rule that is always on that baseball clubhouse door. It'll be interesting to see what Rob Manfred does this time. I want to remind everybody the book again is Pete Rose, An American Dilemma. It is a fascinating book, but it also is a great discussion because he remains one of those subjects that everybody has an opinion about. Kostya Kennedy, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I hope we talk again.
Me too. Great being on with you. Have a great day.
Take care. He's the man who fears no repercussions, never fears the truth. Syndicated talker Jerry Doyle takes a few turns around the water cooler when we come back on MidPoint.